part 3 of what a professional carpenter carries. We've got the pneumatic and power tool video right here. Here we go. In this video, where I'm covering the electric and pneumatic tools that a carpenter would use on a framing job, I've broken the tools down into 3 main categories. We've got layout and marking tools, we've got fastening tools, and we've got cutting tools. Those are the 3 main functions that a carpenter is going to run into on a typical job. For layout, one of the biggest expenses of all our tools almost will be this rotary laser here. This is really good for setting out and making sure all of your mud sills, when you attach them to the top of your stem walls, are level. Sometimes that concrete can wave up and down, and we don't want a corner of the building sagging down and just build off of that, because we're going to have to compensate for that unlevel floor deck all the way through the entire job. By using this tool here, we can just set this shot stick on top of a sill plate all the way around the entire perimeter of the building and any interior load-bearing walls that there might be. And we can make sure those sill plates are exactly where they need to be. We can shim them with washers, tilt panel shims, or grout underneath our mud sill. But this will get that entire job within, I believe the level of accuracy for probably a house site would be within maybe a 1/16 of an inch. So that's well within tolerance. So that's a great tool to have. Another tool that we can use as carpenters is a PLS laser, or basically a plumb level square laser. This particular one shoots out 2 laser planes or lines that are approximately 180 degrees, maybe a little less, but they'll shoot out a big fan line at not only level, but plumb. So the level feature is really nice. This level, as long as you set this little laser on a fairly level surface, it will self-level. It's got some magnetics that dampen it and make sure it's actually level and plumb. For the level plane that you put out, that's good for, say, putting in blocking in kitchens or bathrooms, or anywhere where you need a lot of blocks in at a set height. You can adjust this, turn it on, and you can just install all your blocking to that height. For the plumb line, which is like a vertical fan, that's really beneficial when you've got to install an interior wall, a lot of times in renovation work, where you want to see where that wall needs to hit on the floor, the far wall, and the ceiling, and have it all in the same plane and plumb. So that makes layout really fast. And then this is just a plumb laser, and it shoots just 1 point straight up, 1 point straight down, but they're plumb. That's really handy when you're doing a rake wall, which is a wall where you have an angled top plate, and that can be difficult to lay out where the studs actually need to fall, whether they're 16 inches on center, or if it's a load-bearing wall 12 inches, or if you've got kind of a more of an efficient layout where you're using 24 inches on center. That can be a real challenge to measure your stud layout, because you're measuring in the air. You have to have a lot of area on the ground to lay out the wall ahead of time. This, you just put that laser down on the dot on the bottom, and then it'll transmit that dot up to the top plate, and you can get your measurements and cut all your studs and get them laid out. The next portion of tools that I'm going to talk about are the cutting tools, and these are kind of sequentially the next tools that you're going to typically see used on a job site. We've got to rough cut the material, we've got to do that kind of stuff. So kind of the staple of every carpenter before they start buying a lot of additional tools is going to be something like a skill saw or a circular saw. On the West Coast, we typically use a skill saw where the blade is on one side and the motor actually spins perpendicular to the rotation of the blades. On the East Coast, they have quite a bit more of a following for sidewinders, like we call them sidewinders, where the motor actually is parallel or in line with the blade itself. Several different companies make these, and there are quite a few good ones out there. They're really heavy duty, they have a lot of torque, they'll cut through pretty much anything. So they're kind of the go-to saw for this type of work. They have big ones where they have larger diameter blades, I think around 8 1/4, I believe, and like 10 1/2 are the other 2 standard sizes. But most circular saws and skill saws, worm drive saws, would have a 7 1/4 inch blade. So that's kind of a go-to staple. The next tool that you'll see commonly is a sawzall. And sawzalls are just a reciprocating saw. It's like a power hack saw. It just goes back and forth. And these things will cut, depending on the blade that you have in it, your patience, they'll cut through just about anything. You can get blades that will cut through cast iron pipe. You can get them that'll cut through pretty much any type of steel. And they'll cut through wood and wood that's been embedded with nails and things like that. Really good for demolition. You can do a lot of damage with them if you're not careful. So make sure that you don't have wires and pipes and things like that inside of a wall or on the other side of what you're cutting. But yeah, definitely something that you want to have on a job site. Lots of mistakes are made quite frequently, unfortunately, and you have to cut stuff apart because it's a lot faster than pulling nails. Another tool that you might not think is a cutting tool too much would be an angle grinder. And these are really handy because not only can, like in this case, I've got a diamond grinding cup on it, which will cut or grind concrete surfaces smooth. You can put sanding flat discs, you can put metal grinding and metal cutting blades on it, you can put wire wheels on it, and those are all really handy. So, you know, from like a cup grinder like this, a diamond cup, where you're actually going to grind concrete down, sometimes you'll have concrete where you've got holidays or whoopies, you know, big bumps in it that prevent you from putting what you need down in the right place. So if you've got a stem wall or a slab or something like that, and you want to just grind it and clean it, you can use this. Also, if you need to cut or notch concrete, you can do that with either a straight diamond cutting wheel or an abrasive masonry cutting wheel. As far as the flap discs, basically it's a bunch of pieces of sandpaper in a circle, and those are good at removing wood and also adhesive. So like I said in my second Carpenter video, or actually my first one with the nail bags with the chisel, a lot of times you'll get adhesive on top of floor joists, and you take lunch or you take break or you start the next row and you've got a lot of squish out of adhesive that sets. A flap disc on a grinder can take that off pretty quickly. And then obviously for metal cutting, you may run into anchor bolts or rebar or cut metal straps or any number of items like that that you need to actually cut with a grinder. So grinders come in really handy, probably more than any other tool like a Sawzall. They're very, very versatile. The next thing is, and I wouldn't use this on a framing job, this particular router, but my other one's in a router table right now. So anyways, a router, usually a 3/8 inch shank router, so a mid-size. You'll have quarter, 3/8, and ½ inch depending on the power of the router. But usually a 3/8 router is adequate with a single fluted drilling pilot bit. So what that means is you put a bit like that in your router, you set it so that the bit actually sticks out the bottom of the router a ways, and when you sheet a wall over door and window openings, you don't actually have to cut the sheeting out around that opening. You just take the router, plunge through the opening where you know it is, run the router to the side of the opening, and that pilot bit will start riding on the framing around the door or window opening, and you can just cut all the way around the opening and the panels drop out free. So it's a very quick way of doing things, and usually you can use a rather inexpensive router. It's not a precise thing. So the final area is drilling, and drilling is just basically cutting small circular holes. So that's where drills come in for cutting. The first type here, the most basic, is just a 1/2 inch chuck pistol grip style drill, and the 1/2 inch chuck means you can accept bits or put bits that have up to a 1/2 inch diameter shank into the drill bit. These are really powerful. When you take your finger off the trigger and try and stop the tool, it kind of winds down, so they will sometimes get away from you if the bit binds up and you get twisted wrists and all that kind of stuff. But for the bigger jobs, whether you have to drill a big hole or just long holes, would be a right angle drill. And this again, this is a 1/2 inch chuck drill, and you can put handles into either side to really support it. But what's nice about this one is even though it has a lot of power and it can do a lot of damage or a lot of good depending on what you're doing, it has both a high speed and a low speed. And in the low speed, it has a clutch. So when that bit binds, it will stop spinning immediately and you'll hear it, and that's really beneficial. You can hurt yourself really bad on these drills if they don't have a clutch. I had a previous drill that was made by Milwaukee, and it did not have a clutch, and those things will hurt you bad when they bind up. So I got rid of that and I went to a DeWalt, which does have a clutch. The third type of drill here is again a multi-purpose drill. This is a roto hammer. chipping hammer drill combination. So it has not only just a rotary drilling action, it rotates and impacts so you can drill in masonry, and then it has just a chiseling impacting feature where it doesn't rotate. So anytime you have to drill into concrete or anything like that, or chisel or chip at concrete, this is a drill to have. Now we're getting into the fun stuff. These are the fastening tools. So these tools here will basically fasten into wood and concrete. So we'll start out with the most common tool that you probably recognize for a framing job, which would be a nail gun. This, if you'll notice, I'm rather partial to Hitachi nail guns, and a lot of carpenters are. But then again, it just depends on where you are in the country. Some places Senko is the end all, other places Pass Load and Stanley Boss Stitch. So it really depends on what part of the country you're in to kind of let people know what is the preferred brand. So, but here, Hitachi, that's in my opinion one of the best guns out there. This particular gun has been modified a little bit over the years, but it's been around for a long, long time. It's the NR83 series. So it's fairly lightweight, it has a good amount of power, and it's just a workhorse. This thing will go and go and go like nobody's business. So this is a very, very good, very, very common gun that you'll find on pretty much any type of job, whether residential or commercial. So definitely highly recommend this particular nail gun. Most all of my nail guns have what's called a rafter hook on the side, which will fold out of the way. And so when you're framing, you can hook this over a rafter or floor joist and kind of set the gun aside and keep working on something else. Work on layout, pull the gun up, fire a couple nails, and you're good. So this is one really good gun. The next type of gun you'll typically see would be what's called a Tico gun. And this gun here, the nails will actually protrude out of the nose of the gun itself. And this is specifically for installing metal hardware connectors. You can put the nail in the little punched out hole where the nail is supposed to be installed and pull the trigger, and it'll fire one nail through that one hole. This particular gun, if you're going to get one of these, in my opinion, is a good one because of the fact that there are two sizes of Tico nails lengthwise that you'll typically utilize. You'll use an 1.5 inches and then you'll use a 2.5 inches. This gun has a sleeve that can be moved from those two positions so you can fire either size nail. Some guns do not have that feature, but these Hitachi guns do. So again, another really good gun to have because you can spend many hours putting those nails in by hand. This is an NR90 series Hitachi gun, and this is substantially bigger than the 83, and the purpose of this is it has a lot more power. The cylinder in there, the drive cylinder, is a lot larger, so you get more PSI behind it to drive bigger nails or drive nails into harder material. This will drive up to a 3.5 inch nail, and it'll go into glue lambs and engineered lumber better than an 83 will, just because it has more oomph behind it. So if you're dealing with a lot of engineered lumber, this would be a good gun to consider because you won't have to go back through and finish driving those nails by hand. So definitely a good gun. We also have a palm nailer. And a palm nailer is just a small impact driver, and they call it a palm nailer because you hold it in your palm like that. Hook your air hose to it, you can put the nail in the end of here, and it's magnetic, and then you can just basically push the nail in. And when the nail is depressed and pushed up against whatever you're trying to fasten, it will actually start hammering like an impact gun, like bat, 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 bat. And so you'll hear it. Brr, brr. So these are really handy for concealed tight areas because you don't need much room. They make them quite a bit smaller nowadays, but I haven't used those, so I'm not sure if they're as powerful or as good as this style here. Then we have an impact wrench, and this is a 1/2 inch drive impact wrench. This one is pneumatic. They have electric ones. I like the pneumatic personally, but you can use electric ones. These are really convenient when you've got a lot of anchor bolts and hold downs and different type of bolting material or functions to do. So you can run those nuts in, run the bolts in real quick with an impact wrench. And in my second carpentry tool video, I showed you that I had impact sockets that are I change them out depending on the job and the requirements of a particular job. That would be run with the impact wrench. Now, a holdover from the last group of tools, which are the electric, is the roto hammer. A lot of times you'll have to drill into the concrete to install additional anchors that may have been missed or misplaced or something like that. So having a roto hammer is a crucial tool, because if you have to go back afterwards and you miss where anchor bolts need to be installed, that's not great. So carrying a roto hammer, definitely a benefit. And a lot of times you can either put anchors in that are expansive anchors, which mean they mechanically wedge into the hole, or you can use an epoxy anchor. If you do an epoxy anchor, number one, you have to have the tool. This is a two-part sausage tube, which basically is like a foil pack that smushes inside of this holder. You either need to have the gun to apply it, or you have to have a special caulk tube itself that goes into a normal caulk gun, and those are a little bit more difficult to operate. The one thing about epoxy is make sure that you check that the inspectors are okay with you installing it either with them or without them. A lot of commercial jobs you have to have a materials testing company or an engineering company come out and actually witness that the holes are cleaned out properly, they're to the correct depth, correct diameter, and that the epoxy is the correct mixture and the process is done correctly. So a lot of times on commercial jobs where you do epoxy, you have to have the entire process witnessed. So just be aware of that, because if you don't have it done and witnessed correctly, you might have to go back and redo it later. And then the final one is a powder actuated fastener. This one's kind of, I don't know, there aren't many that are up to this level here. This one is a completely automatic gun. It has a 10 nail magazine, and so it is, depress it, pull the trigger, it'll fire a nail, it'll advance the shot strip magazine, you move to the next one, you push it down, you fire the nail. These are adjustable, not only in the color, aka the power of the shot that you install into it, but it also has a dial that you can dial up or dial down the power of this. You can take this magazine off the nose and just do a single shot style, so it's very versatile. It can shoot small nails, it can shoot the big nails, it can shoot all kinds of, a whole variety of fasteners. So this one's really versatile. I hope you enjoyed this third episode in the three-part series of professional carpentry tools. If you have any questions or comments about this video or the other two in the series, feel free to leave a comment below, and also remember to like, subscribe, and share this video. I've got a lot more videos that I'm planning to do, and just look forward to getting them out there. So again, this is Dan with Dan and Sarah Makers. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one. Bye.